Seasons pass, but time stands still. Rivers flow and always will. Nights are long and days endure. The pain inside must have a cure.
What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy. And right now I'm at a cemetery in Brookfield, Wisconsin. And I'm visiting the grave of a girl named Lindsay Huenink. Let me show you her grave right now. Here's her grave right here. Her name was Lindsay Faith Huenink, and she was born in 1992, and she died in 2011. Just like William Norton from Joplin, Missouri. For those of you who've been following me on YouTube for a long time, you guys would know that I always visit people's graves, and 100% of the time, it's always someone who I've never met in person before. And it's always someone who I've just read about online, who I felt really sorry for. However, there's something different about this grave. I actually knew Lindsay Huenink, and me and her went to school together. And me and her had a class together back in the 2010 to 2011 school year. During first semester, in fourth hour, it was journalism class. I was a freshman and she was a senior, and she sat right across from me in the class, and I knew who she was. It was really sad when I found out about what happened to her. Even though I never really knew her that well, I only spoken to her a few times. I never really talked about this in any of my YouTube videos, but March of year 2011 was a very rough time for me. I myself actually almost committed suicide in March of 2011. That's how I got this scar on my arm, March 19th of 2011. Lindsay Huenink died on March 30th of 2011. She committed suicide by laying down on train tracks, and she was killed by a freight train that hit her. It was never clear exactly why she did that at all. There were a lot of rumors and speculations of it, but the police said that there was nothing suspicious about her death. And it was ruled a suicide, but no one knows why Lindsay would do that, because she always seemed like such a happy person, and she had a lot of friends, and a lot of people cared about her. And I remember when I first found out about her death, when they called me in to the high school, because I've been out of school for a few days after I tried committing suicide, and I didn't want to go back to the high school at all because I was being bullied there. That's one of the major reasons why I attempted suicide back then. And then that's when I learned that a girl at that high school, the same one that I went to, committed suicide, and they said that her name was Lindsay. And then all of a sudden, I just remembered hearing that name before, and I asked them, was she blonde? And they all went quiet and they nodded yes. And I asked how old was she, and they said she was an 18-year-old senior. And I asked them, was she best friends with Rose? And they nodded their head yes. and they said that Rose was her best friend. And I was already really stressed out. But when I found that out, I just remember crying because this was a couple weeks after the first time I visited the grave for Cassandra Gellicke, and I felt horrible for what happened to Cassandra Gellicke, and I didn't even know her at all, but this time it was different. This was someone who I actually did know and who I actually did go to school with. This was Lindsay Huenink. I saw her in the hallways every day, and she was gone. There was even a whole page in the school yearbook dedicated to her, because that's the year she would have graduated, 2011. I felt sorry for her. Even though me and her weren't close friends, I still felt horrible that she was in so much pain. As I was saying earlier, no one really knew the reason why she did that, but I always believed that it was because of bullying, because I went to the same high school as her, and I knew how people were at that high school. One day, people would pretend to be your friend, and then the next day, someone else comes up to you and tells you, hey, don't be friends with that person. They said this about you behind your back, or they said this about you behind your back. Or one day, you go online on Facebook, and you find them typing mean stuff about you. That happened to me all the time. The thing was, back in high school, I was more of an outcast. It never really seemed that way for Lindsay Huenink at all. But you really never know. That's the thing. Someone may seem popular, but it may all just be an illusion. I wouldn't be surprised if there was someone at that school who was bullying Lindsay Huenink. And if I could say one word to Lindsay Huenink, I would tell her that I never forgot about her, and that I'm really sorry that she was in so much pain. And I wanted to come here and let her know that I never forgot about her, and that I always felt sorry for her. And my mind always goes back to that time in March of 2011, because that could have been me. I could have been the one who died instead. And from time to time I think, what if I was the one who died instead? What if it was me who died? What if my suicide attempt on March 19th of 2011, the way I got this scar on my arm, what if it would have worked and I would have died, and everyone at our high school would have known about it, and Lindsay would have found out about it just 11 days before she would have died? Would she have stopped and thought about it and thought that maybe that's not a good idea? Maybe she shouldn't commit suicide at all? But in all honesty, I just wish there would have been a way that both of us would have lived, and that neither of us would die. But it's just not fair. Because that's another thing about suicide. It doesn't have to be a lingering problem. Just one day, something could just go wrong, and things might just get overwhelming to someone just all in one day, and then it just wears down on them all in one day. and then they just do it, and once they're gone, it's too late to turn back. That's another thing that I thought of, because I never thought that things in Lindsay's life were bad enough for something like this to happen. And I was shocked about that it was someone I knew, someone who I was in class with from September of 2010 to January of 2011 during our first semester, who passed away. I wanted to come here and leave these flowers by her grave. I wanted to leave green flowers by her grave because green was her favorite color. And I remember after her death, they were giving out bracelets that were green that said "Shine On." Another thing I wanted to talk about was the very few memories I had of Lindsay Huenink. I was in class with her, in journalism class, for a whole entire semester, and one memory I have of her was when we were talking about the school newspaper, the Tyros, during journalism. Yeah, in case you're all wondering, Tyro is what we called the school newspaper back then. I forgot exactly what it stood for. And this was something that all the freshman boys were doing. They were folding up their school newspapers into hats and they were wearing them. And everyone thought it was funny. And our journalism teacher was actually the one who was in charge of the school newspaper back in our high school. And I actually pulled out one of my hats, the school newspaper that was folded into the shape of the hat. And some of the seniors who were sitting by me, they were telling me, "Joe, don't pull that out. What are you doing?" And then Lindsay Huenink, who was sitting across the room, she pointed at me and she said, "Joe, what is that?" And then I showed it to her and I said, "It's the Tyro school newspaper. One of the freshman boys folded it up into a hat for me. Isn't this cool?" And then I forgot that the journalism teacher was in charge of the Tyro school newspaper. And then one of the seniors said, "Oh, that's what Joe Winko thinks of your Tyros." That was one of the only few memories I have of Lindsay, but I always look back at that and I always thought it was a funny one, and I never forgot about it. And then the next memory I had was when we were walking in the hallway, and I saw her walking in the hallway, and it was just a casual, short conversation. I said, "Hi, Lindsay," and then she said hi back, and she was nice and everything. And I asked her, where was she on her way to? What class did she have next? And she said that she had gym class next. And then I forgot what class that I had next, but I was on my way to it, and I told her, "Oh, well, okay, I'll see you around." And she smiled and waved. And that was one of the last memories I had of her. But those were the only memories I had of Lindsay Huenink, because even though I didn't know her, me and her weren't very close. We never really talked at all, really. But in all honesty, I knew Lindsay Huenink more than any other grave that I ever visited. So I wanted to leave these flowers by her grave and let her know that I never forgot about her and that she will never be forgotten at all. And I wanted everyone to remember her. And I'm sorry you were suffering so much, Lindsay Huenink. And I wanted her to know that we miss you and that we will always miss you. And you forever will be our sunshine. Rest in peace, Lindsay Faith Huenink. I wish you peace in the afterlife.